Okay, what is a thesis statement and how to write it? Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. But your screen has this black box that's covering the top.
Oh, I'm not sure.
No, not your screen. As in the PowerPoint you're showing has a black box that's covering the top.
Oh, yeah, I think, yeah, even I can, I don't know how to, yeah, I follow that. But I don't think I know how to remove
Remove
it.
it.
Yeah,
Okay, sure. Never
okay.
mind.
But you can see the slides, right?
Yes, crystal
Okay, yeah,
clear.
that's
Yeah.
more than enough. Okay, so what is a thesis statement and how to write it? So that's our main talking point today. Okay. First of all, we'll define the thesis statement in the next slide, but simply what types of thesis could there be? It appears to be that there can be three kinds of uh, theses. For instance, argumentative. This thesis makes a strong case for an issue and cogently argues with supporting evidence. Okay, this just simply to say that this thesis will argue for such and such a case. That's the argumentative thesis. The other one is analytical. This thesis breaks down the existing arguments on a topic into key components and probabilistically posits a thesis. What is probabilistically positing a thesis? If this were the case, this is what it would happen if this were the case. Like, for instance, Timothy and I were talking, we could say, well, if artificial intelligence takes over human thinking, this would result. So that is the probabilistic, that's being probabilistic. So analytical thesis will say, well, it will take an issue and analyze. And at the end of it, it will come up with, all theses will have to come up with a core point, a core idea. Then you also have an exegetical thesis, like Karen was saying. So what should we do in a biblical course, such as Pentateuch, that you're doing? So, exegetical thesis descriptively discusses an idea without taking a stand for or against it to begin with. So, this is it kind of a thesis and states an idea that emerges at the end of the description as the thesis. Let's say, for instance, um, in the book of Genesis, uh, Abraham is asked or was asked to sacrifice his son Isaac. Okay, so you take that passage for your exegesis. So it is possible to take it without any, or discuss it without any reference to the ancient Mediterranean culture, ancient Near Eastern culture. Uh, Whereas you can take the whole idea and understand the idea of sacrificing the first son. Why? Because it was not anything unique to this particular text. To the extent I have read, in the ancient world, the belief was that if the firstborn of the family is sacrificed, then the family is likely to have more children, more sons. So that was the idea. Like, for instance, you have in the book of Judges, Jephthah uh, just makes impulsively a promise, or takes a pledge that he would sacrifice the thing that first comes from the house when he goes back after the war. Okay, why did he do that? Then you can study the ancient background. How was it done in ancient cultures and all this kind of things? Then you can say what at the end of it, the exegesis shows that in the ancient world, the ancients had this particular idea because the belief was different. Not theologically that God can raise even the dead. That's a theological explanation. It's neither right nor wrong, neither good nor bad. It is simply a theological explanation. Whereas if you take the same idea to its original ancient background, historical background, conceptual background, religious or theological background, it will give you a different idea. That's the whole point of an exegetical paper. So you can choose any topic that excites you, that interests you. You can talk about creation itself. You can talk about the Epic of Gilgamesh. You can talk about Noah's flood, and there are contemporary flood stories. You can talk about covenants, the Hittite suzerainty treaties, polytheism and monotheism. The Shema, for instance, in Pentateuch, where in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse 4, the Shema, which means hear, say, hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one. So monotheism, kind of monotheism versus polytheism, or is it strictly monotheism or monolatry? You can explain that. So that is exegetical thesis. Then, what is a thesis statement? Simply, as you can notice here, what's the point? What's your point? This is the definition. Thesis statement is a statement. It's a statement, and that's the description of the writer's main point, central argument, or claim of the essay. So you could say this paper argues, or this paper holds as the initial premise this particular idea. It functions as a roadmap guiding the writer through the arguments that are presented in the work. A clear and concise thesis statement sets the tone and direction for the entire paper. So it's just a point in a sentence. It's a point in a sentence. So meaning simply, it cannot be more than one short sentence at the end of the introduction paragraph. Okay, I'll give you one small example from personal experience. When I did my PhD, the word limit given to me was 100,000 words, of course, including footnotes, not including bibliography, but footnotes, 100,000 words. Then, when I finished it, I had to come up with a 300-word abstract. Then, when I sat for the Viva, which was the make or break kind of a session, the examiners asked me this. Can you give your thesis in one statement, in one sentence? You come to think of it, I had taken 3 or 4 years to do it, 100,000 words, whereas I finished it in 75,000 words. Let's say 100,000 words, 4 years, 100,000 words, and a 300-word abstract. And now is the moment when when I'm expected to give them in one sentence my thesis statement. And if I am not able to do that, then they would conclude that I hadn't done my research at all, or whatever I have given was not mine. Whereas PhD, as you will know, is supposed to be the original work. So I had to give. When I gave that, that was well accepted. There were arguments, of course, but at least I could prove that this was the point of a 100,000-word dissertation or thesis. So what is a thesis statement? What's the main point? What are you trying to say? So, the purpose statement is not the thesis statement. I have read in many what to call term papers, students saying this paper intends to do this. This paper, the purpose of the paper is to do this. The purpose statement is not the thesis statement. It tells what you would do, but it doesn't give the main idea. So one of the first things that any professor will look for in any term paper is, what are you trying to say? What's the main point? What should I read? What am I looking for? So it's just one sentence. It is not a paragraph. And the title of your term paper, I must insist on this, the title of your term paper should reflect the thesis statement. The assignment topic is not the term paper title. The term paper title should come from the thesis statement. So, what's a thesis statement? It's the description of the writer's main point, central argument, or claim of the essay. It functions as a roadmap guiding the writer through the arguments that are presented in the work. A clear and concise thesis statement sets the tone and direction for the entire paper. Just one statement. What are the characteristics of a good thesis statement? First of all, it clearly specifies the topic that is debatable. Okay. The short video that we will watch at the end of my very short presentation will clarify that. The topic that you take has to be a debatable one. It shouldn't say something that is not debatable. Like, for instance, just as I have given you, just to give you a word, an idea, for instance, the covenants in the Pentateuch are replicas of the suzerainty covenants or the Hittite suzerainty treaties. This is a debatable one because traditionally the covenant is given by God, instituted by God. It is as if it's a new idea that appears for the first time. Whereas much before the appearance of the ancient Hebrews, the Hittites were having all these things. They were a superpower. So you can argue, is this the case or this is not the case? Debatable one. Or you could say, well, you have the flood stories and you have the Babylonian flood stories. Does the Genesis flood story follow the Babylonian flood story? Or does the Genesis creation account follow the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Babylonian creation accounts, creation myths, you could say? It should be a debatable one. That's all I'm saying. It should be a debatable one. So, and if it is a debatable one, it should also be a falsifiable one. That is very scientific. It should be something that can be falsified. Somebody can raise a counter argument. Yes or no or yes, that kind. But if you're making a point from a theological point of view or a doctrinal point of view, that will come with this emphasis, this is it. So you are already providing an idea that cannot be questioned. A thesis statement is not that. So it clearly specifies the topic that is debatable. Okay, then I came across this. This one you can find this in Google somewhere. The different laws like Murphy's law here, the Kidlin's law, and this is part of that list. If you can write a problem down clearly, it is half solved. Okay, write down your problem. So what are you problematizing? What is the issue? So a thesis or a term paper is not a descriptive, really speaking, it's not a descriptive paper. We are not writing textbooks or anything like that. It's in that sense argumentative. What is the problem? You're talking about covenant, fine, but what's the problem? You're talking about God, what's the problem? You're talking about creation account, what's the problem? You're talking about slavery, what's the problem? You're talking about violence, what's the problem? You're talking about the offering of Isaac as sacrifice. What's the problem? You're talking about polygamy in the ancient world. So what is the case? You're talking about circumcision. What's the problem? So if you can write a problem down clearly, it is half solved. I'll give you again my own personal experience. This is not to remind that I have done my PhD, but much of my learning began there, really speaking. Yes, I did my master's and my learning began there, but my learning was put to ultimate test when I did my PhD. Okay, when I went to UK to do my PhD, at the end of the first year, we had to come up with a clear thesis statement and a PhD quality chapter. I vaguely had an idea of what I wanted to do. I just wanted to do something on conversion. So if you went to any search engine and then you write conversion, it gives you millions of websites and ideas about conversion. So my whole problem was defining the problem itself. Sometimes that's the problem. Defining the problem is the problem. And so I spent days and months and months and months taking long walks and thinking about what I wanted to do. Of course, you don't have the luxury of that long a time, but I had to do that. But then um, uh, one day in the middle of the night, I sat down and on a table, a long paper, I made a big chart of the whole book of Acts. I looked at the supernatural phenomena. I looked at the discourses or the speeches. I tried to see some links. So when I was able to do that, I had the whole book in the form of a table or some graphs. I got my problem. So the moment I got some insight, I wrote down the problem, refined it. I immediately sent it to my supervisor, and she said, "You have an excellent idea, excellent problem. Come tomorrow. We will discuss it." So the very following day, I went. We discussed. It was fixed, and I got through my whole work without any trouble. So what I'm saying is, in your term paper, it could be any course. It doesn't matter. You must define your problem. What are you problematizing? That's very important. Then it takes a position on the topic. So you could say, for instance, as I said, well, um, sacrificing Isaac is a matter of faith or was a matter of faith. Or you could say, well, the biblical account follows the ancient Near Eastern uh, social narrative. You could do that. Monolatry or monotheism. So you can take a position. Is it monolatry or monotheism? What is monolatry? You have multiple gods and you choose one among the multiple gods as if he were the only one. That is monolatry. Whereas monotheism is having one God and only one God, as if he were the only God of entire humanity. You can take a position. Then it provides an overview of key supporting arguments that explore and examine in the paper. So, term paper is not a descriptive one. You have to have supporting arguments. You are taking a position. You're taking a point of view. That's perfectly fine. But what are your arguments? On what grounds are you able to come to such and such a conclusion? On what grounds are you making such observations? Then you have to provide evidence, supporting arguments and evidence. A strong thesis, like for instance, you could say, well, if again, just to illustrate the sacrificing of Isaac, for instance, or the Epic of Gilgamesh, the creation accounts in the book of Genesis and the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Babylonian creation myths. So you can give parallel texts, word for word parallelism may be there. You can say, well, if we study the parallel texts and the structure and the details and the date, for instance, we can come up with a particular argument, something like that. So you can say, well, the Genesis creation account is unique. There may be parallels, but it is unique. or there are parallels, but it is different. Even that goes. So the differences between the Genesis creation account and the Babylonian creation myths. You can show the differences with arguments and evidence. A strong thesis statement demonstrates thorough research, that the research questions raised at the outset of the study have been answered. Okay, so now in your introduction, you will say, well, this paper will argue or takes the position. You can explain, and or the main point of the thesis of the paper is this. And in order to discuss, or in order to establish this thesis, the paper raises certain questions that are related to this subject. Like, for instance, is it monotheism or monolatry? What are the implications? How is monotheism defined and how is monolatry defined? What are the implications and the consequences of the definitions? And what are the, for instance, why at all the ancient Hebrews came up with either monolatry or monotheism? Why? You can raise all those questions. Then, once the research is done, once you write your conclusion, you will have to go back to your research questions in your introduction and make sure that those questions have been answered in your research or when you come to your conclusion. Yeah, so that's the whole point. So no question is raised just for the sake of asking questions. Unless the questions are answered, you should not raise any question. But you must raise a valid research question. Then it shows, actually, as it happened in my case, I had to show all the research questions in my introduction. The examiners had taken really more than a month to read through my thesis and make sure that for every claim I made, I had supporting arguments, supporting evidence, and every question I raised, I have answered. This is how it flows so naturally, so convincingly. A well-written thesis statement is just about one to three sentences in length, given at the end of the first paragraph in the introduction. It ties all the ideas and arguments in the paper together. So it gives you a sense of direction. Like, for instance, you're not going to say what are the different buses or the public transport methods one can take to come to TCA College. That's one thing. But you can also say, well, if you start from Pungo, for instance, and if you take MRT or if you take bus, this particular line number, it will bring you there with absolute specificity. It ties all the ideas and arguments in the paper together. A strong thesis statement is debatable, clear, succinct, focused, and defensible. It is debatable. We keep telling that. It's not a faith statement, which is not questionable. It's not a belief statement. It's not a faith statement. It's not a creed. It's an idea that should be debatable, clear, succinct, focused, defensible. And I would even add, it's not here, I would even add, it should be falsifiable. Science offers us that great privilege of falsifying an idea. If the falsifiability is not built into any idea, then it's a doctrinal statement. Look at it. Okay. Then, steps to follow. Understand the topic and expectations. So, as we said, whether it's an argumentative one or an analytical one or an exegetical one. So, if you are doing an exegetical paper, what are the expectations? What are the steps you must follow? And what are the characteristics of an exegetical paper? We must understand. Then determine the nature of the thesis, argumentative, analytical, or exegetical, or expository. I alluded to it. Identify the problem or clarify what about in the topic that you want to problematize. We said that already. What are you problematizing? What is the issue? What's the problem? Okay. Now, you think of a medical case. Okay. Somebody may go to a GP and say, well, doctor, I feel unwell. I said, "No, what's the issue?" "Oh, I feel very strange. I feel very um, unusual in my body. My body is reacting abnormally. I can't tell you what it is." The doctor might give you simply Panadol or ask you to take some rest, and that's it. But if the patient is able to say clearly, like for instance, there was blood in my urine, then the doctor will ask you to do several tests, or may do several tests. Was it painful, or was it not painful? Uh, why? So several, the doctor might even refer the patient to a urologist or anybody. So that's the whole point here. What are you problematizing? Be absolutely specific. Conduct a preliminary research to collect the data. So read as widely as you can. That's very important. Not just one book, not just one source, not just one verse or two verses. Read as widely as you can, because the wider you read, the more you are able to understand the issue, the problem, and it will give you a much broader perspective, broader understanding of how the problem itself had been defined or understood by various scholars. Then form an initial hypothesis or a tentative thesis statement about the topic. Okay, this is the initial premise, initial hypothesis to begin with. So you think, for instance, you think that the sacrificing of Isaac was a theological issue, simply a theological issue, or was a historical issue, or was an issue, or was a story that followed a particular pattern from the ancient Middle Eastern culture, something like that. Form an initial hypothesis or a tentative thesis statement, thesis about the topic. Identify the studies done on the topic in order to find a gap for your own study or to add to the scholarly discussion about it. Okay, I fully understand that you may be doing your MDiv, or you may be doing your MA in intercultural studies, or BTH, or whatever. At this level of your studies, you're not expected to come up with something absolutely original under the sun. You're not expected to do that. Whereas when I did my PhD or even master's, we had to have some sense of originality. But certainly, PhD, it had to be original, absolutely original. Whereas in your case, all that you're doing is to collect the data and structure the data, put the data together, and analyze the data and say, well, if one looks at the data um, from this particular point of view, one cannot but come to the understanding that the text means this. That's the whole thing. Okay, this may not be a new idea, but in your so-called literature survey, you may have come across different scholarly positions on a particular topic. So one scholarly position may be more appealing to you than the other. But you can say, well, there are different positions offered by the scholars, but this paper takes the position of this particular school of thought and will research and investigate the issue and will add to the ongoing scholarly discussion on this particular topic or something like that. Do further research and narrow down the area of your research to collect the evidence for your argument. So narrow it down. What's the focus? It cannot be as wide as you would want. So it's more narrowly focused. Finally, revisit your research questions. I said that hypothesis or the tentative thesis, and check you have answered all the questions and whether your research findings support your thesis or whether your study necessitates restating your thesis. Like, for instance, you may have started with the initial hypothesis that sacrificing Isaac was not a historical act. Let's say that, for the sake of our argument. It was not a historical act, but the author of the book of Genesis wanted to convey a theological idea. Okay, that's your initial hypothesis. But then the more you read about it, the more you do the exegesis, the more you consult various biblical scholars, Hebrew scholars, then at the end of it, you may have realized that it was a historical act. Okay, so then you'll have to go back and restate your premise. Remove the hypothesis idea. Can so well, rather than saying this paper begins with the initial or tentative thesis, this paper holds the view or will argue or will establish the thesis that this is the case. And go back and, as I said, go back and make sure that all the questions you have raised have been answered. And wherever you need to restate your thesis statement, restate your research questions, you will have to do that. Otherwise, everything will be mismatched. There will be a huge gap between what you said you would do in the introduction, and at the end of it, your thesis, your term paper doesn't show that you have not done what you said you would, what you claimed you would do. Okay, with this short introduction, I would want to show you a short video on how to write a clear and strong thesis statement. The presenter is a scholar, a professional, will perhaps restate in much better way what I have been telling you, but it's worth watching. Let's watch the video.
Hey there, it's Wendy from Worldwide Speak. I'd like to talk to you today about the thesis statement. A lot of times my students are confused about what a thesis statement is. So I've made this video to clear things up. Also, if you haven't subscribed, you might want to do that now so that you know when our latest videos are available and you can watch them right away. All right, what is a thesis statement? Well, here's a pretty basic definition of what one is from dictionary.com. It's a short statement that usually summarizes the main point or claim or opinion of your essay, and it's developed and supported and explained with examples, reasons, or evidence. But what really is it? It's the most important piece of your essay. This statement is your paper. It's your argument or the point that you're trying to make. Your entire paper, your entire essay centers around this one crucial statement, which is why you need to get this right and why I've made this video. So let's look at it more closely. All right, so when we talk about the thesis statement, one way I like to describe it to my students is for them to think about it like a destination for a vacation. You know exactly the very specific place that you're going to, and that's like your thesis. You know where you're going in your paper, right? You have an opinion or an argument that you would like to convey or to tell your reader, and it's very specific, and it's one place or one idea. You are trying to convince people that this is the best place to visit, this destination you're going to. Well, in your paper, this convincing, like you would convince a friend that the place you're vacationing is the best, in your paper, it's going to be clear and it's going to be strong. You're going to convince people. And lastly, when you're going to your destination, you plan accordingly. You know, if you're going skiing, you're not packing sundresses, right? You're going to pack your ski equipment and clothing for the appropriate weather. And that planning And that support for your destination, your vacation, that's your support and your details in your paper. So you're going to one place, right? That's your thesis, one idea. And then all of the planning that goes into your paper or into your vacation, that's your support and your details. And it's very clear and strong because you know where you're going. All right, so what are the parts or the pieces that make up this super strong thesis statement? First, you have to decide on your topic, and it needs to be really specific. This informs or tells the reader what your paper is about. Then, the second part of it is that you need to have your opinion or your argument or your idea. This is the part where you decide what you want the reader to know about your topic. This is where you state your opinion, one that is debatable and relevant. And lastly, you are going to include your reasons or your plan, right? Just like how you plan a trip. This is the part where you tell the reader how you will support your opinion with your reasons and evidence. It's the because part of your paper. Okay, so I just told you about the three pieces or three parts of the thesis statement. You need a specific topic, you need your opinion, and then you need to show how you're going to do that with your reasons. So let's go through this in detail. So the first part is the topic. And we already know that tells the reader what your paper is about. Well, let's say we were writing a paper about the best vacation destination while we're on the topic of talking about vacations. And we wanted to write about the topic winter sports. That's kind of bad because it's just way too big. It's too big of a topic. Well, what if we then said, okay, well, let me pick one of those winter sports. How about skiing? It's a little bit better because it's not as big as winter sports, but it's still, it's not specific enough. We really need to narrow our focus to have a strong, clear, effective thesis statement. So what about if we got really specific and we said, ski vacation at Telluride? For those of you who don't know, Telluride is a ski resort in the state of Colorado in the United States, and it is absolutely lovely. All right, number two, that's where we give our opinion or our argument or our idea about this super specific topic. Well, what if we were to write something like this? A ski vacation at Telluride is fun. Well, that's bad because it's just way too obvious and it's really not debatable. I mean, that fun is just my opinion and can't really be debated as a topic. So then what if we wrote something like this? A ski vacation at Telluride is my favorite vacation. It's better, but it's still not good enough because it's only about you. It's this individual opinion and it's not really debatable. So let's see if the third time is the charm. What if we wrote something like this? A ski vacation at Telluride is a unique experience. Well, here we go. It's my opinion, but it's also debatable. I can describe this unique experience with specific reasons. Which brings me to number three, our reasons or your plan of your paper. Just like when you plan a vacation, you have everything mapped out. The same thing is true with your paper. And in your thesis statement, you let the reader know what your plan is. And we do this with our reasons. And so for this topic, in this thesis statement, one of the reasons could be the historic town. Another reason could be the amazing ski hill. And then the last reason could be that there's exquisite après-ski dining. So there you have it. You see how you really have to narrow down your topic and your opinion, and then be very specific with your reasons in order to have a strong thesis statement. Now, let's take a look at what happens when we put all of these pieces together to make this thesis statement. This is what it looks like. A ski vacation at Telluride is a unique experience because of its historic town, amazing ski hill, and exquisite après-ski dining. If you see here in this thesis statement, there are three pieces. There is the super specific topic, that's the ski vacation at Telluride. There's my opinion about it, that it's a unique experience. And then the third part is I tell you why it's a unique experience, because of three reasons. So hopefully this helps you clear up any confusion about writing a thesis statement and writing one that's really strong, clear, and effective. And remember, your thesis statement is your essay. It's the most important statement in the entire essay. You've got to get it right.
Okay. We have looked at all these things, and so I'll stop sharing this. We'll okay. So you have now a good idea of what a strong thesis statement is, and what should be done, and how it should be formulated, and what are some of the specifics of a good thesis statement. Okay, it appears super simple, but writing can be difficult at any time. So you'll have to go back again and again and keep thinking about it and look at the whole issue from different points of view, flip it around, and you might discover something that you thought you always knew, but perhaps an understanding that will turn your whole world upside down, really speaking. Yes? Okay. That's the quickest presentation I had. You have anything further to clarify? Any quick thoughts, questions, clarification, any insight, anything that I can clarify further? Or if everything was perfectly understandable, that's fine too.
Nothing from me.
Oh, wonderful. I'm glad to hear. So everything is fine. Super.
Everything was crystal clear.
Very good. Caleb, any quick thoughts, questions? Everything is fine. David, are you there? Okay, David. Okay, nothing from me. David has sent a text. So perfect. I won't hold you. But in the process of writing, if there is any clarification need, please feel free to write to me, and I can add a point or two. But certainly in forum 5B, you will post your thesis statement, and try to be as elaborate as possible, though the word limit is given, but try to be as elaborate as possible, because I need to be able to see your thesis statement in a context. So even if you're giving a brief outline, I should be able to see where to locate and how you have arrived at this at your thesis statement. It's very important. I have had great struggle in reading through the 5B post in many other online courses. Students simply gave outline, introduction, main body, and conclusion, finished. And this is the statement, finished. So I'm an ordinary man, very terribly ordinary man, down to earth. So I don't have the gift of inspiration or revelation to know what the student has in mind. I can understand anything only to the extent I can read the language and understand. So I would very strongly, highly encourage you to be considerate of me and pray for me. When you write your thesis paper, don't paper, pray for me to understand.
Dr. Babu, is it in the process of writing, sometimes my thesis statement will change or I
Okay.
will tweak it or whatever. Is that okay?
Yes, but
Okay.
okay, this is only while you're writing. Okay, but by the time you finish your term paper, it should have taken some final position. You should have had taken some final position. There shouldn't be any sense of fluidity after that. So at least you can say, like even in the presentation, that lady said, this is a unique experience. It's individual, but she said it is debatable. But at the end of it, a case is set and settled. Certain arguments have been given, but each thesis must be, or I will evaluate each thesis on the basis of its merits and arguments. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All well, Timothy? Okay. Very good. I won't hold you. I wish you all a wonderful, enjoyable learning experience and writing experience. Think of your term paper as your master literary work, masterpiece. Okay. So don't, I was telling Timothy and I were talking actually, if we put our minds, there's hardly anything that we cannot think. Artificial intelligence is not really terribly helpful in that sense. If you think hard, I can tell you, even as a BTH student, you will BTH or BD, MDiv or MA in intercultural studies student, you will come up with wonderful, wonderful, brilliant ideas that even a well-established commentator may not have even realized. So just think and think well, think for yourself, and I think you will discover wonderful things. Okay, I wish you well and all good success in your learning experience. Take care.
Thank you, Dr. Babu.
Thank
Good
you, Dr.
night.
Babu. Thank you.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.